Our story starts in a dimly lit cave crawling with the monsters that we love to hate. Goblins. Right now, they are celebrating the death of their chief. With the death of the leader comes the opportunity to take his weapon and other possessions. The big goblin lying on the floor must be the chief, and the little ones trying to loot his body are the mindless bastards. They can't even figure out who will take the wooden club. Two little goblins settled their argument over who gets to be the next chief in the only way they could. By fighting it out, whoever survives is in the right. If you see goblins fighting, you better close your eyes because they are very brutal. They would scratch, bite, and use every dirty trick in the book while cursing at each other. As for the rest of the goblin lair, they naturally gravitate to the violence. They would form a circle and cheer for the combatants to finish each other off. Among the audience, one goblin remembered that the chief had left some untouched prey deeper in the cave. Now that no one technically owns the prey, they can go and take it for themselves. There is one problem with that plan, though. There is a guy guarding the prey quite fiercely. That guy they are talking about is about to return to the prey spot and stand guard. This dude they were talking about was also a goblin, but he's not like the other goblins. In what way, you ask? You'll see. As he walks to the prey, the rest of the goblin lair stares at him with revulsion and hatred. He's been widely known as the guardian of the prey, a disgusting creature that covers his body up like a human. Some of the goblins think that he's just keeping the prey for himself, so they all thought of the same thing. They just have to follow the guard until they reach the prey. But some of the more cautious goblins wanted to wait a bit longer, as some guys had already gone to scour the cave to find the prey right after the chief died. Those are tough goblins too. Once the fighting starts, the smarter and more cautious ones can swoop in. Of course, the outcast goblin heard everything that these bastards were saying and whispering behind his back. Then he heard screaming, and the desperate call for help from a woman coming from deep within the cave. It prompted the outcast to run as fast as he could. As he laid eyes upon the entrance of the chief's room, the pleading for help grew louder and louder. The outcast ran faster than he had ever run before and slid into the dark room. The prey was fighting for her life and dignity as goblins held her down to the ground. She doesn't want to give birth to goblin children. The bastard goblins and the prey noticed the arrival of the outcast at the same time. She started crying and begging for help even more desperately. As the hot breaths and grubby hands of the goblins touched her body, the outcast appealed to the goon goblins to let her go, to no avail. In this room, skeletal remains of all kinds of creatures have been scattered all over. The biggest goblin in the room stood up to the freak outcast, insisting that the prey was now his after the chief's death. If the freak disagrees with that and dares to take his prey, then he could just die in the hands of these goon goblins. 3 goons charged at him from the front. They were clumsy, but they had the numbers advantage. Dodging is the only feasible move. The outcast can't believe that these low-level goblins are giving him a hard time defending. They ineptly scratched and bit his skin, tearing up his cloak, but the outcast gritted his teeth and locked in. He can't just die here. He's only getting started. He needs to survive. His desperation led to goblin blood being spilled on the floor. Once the first goblin was felled, the other 2 were afflicted with fear of coming next. The outcast has brought out his roughly made dagger to take one down and scare the other 2. He raised the janky blade and threatened to kill them if they did not leave at once. These bastards only act tough when they feel secure that they can overwhelm an enemy. But in the face of real danger, they would 100% fold. That is what's happening right now. They were so cocky while declaring that the prey belonged to them, but the first sight of a weapon made them run for their pathetic lives. Mr. Outcast heaved a sigh of relief. His adrenaline was up to the roof. The girl came up to him to ask if he was okay, and to thank him for saving her once again. Unlike the other goblins, Mr. Outcast never laid a finger on her. He would even lay his life on the line to protect her again and again. She doesn't want him to die or be harmed in any way, as he's not like the other goblins. The girl says that, and it has always been that way. Mr. Outcast here was once a human too. He first awakened in the same miserable room where prey was stashed. He did not expect that instead of meeting God after being hit by a dump truck, he'd be transported to another world with a system instead. Although he has one of those OP systems, it has still not been fully activated. Other than being able to see some of his stats, it does not seem to have any other useful functions. However, he has not been idle these past few days. He has been talking with this woman Prey for quite some time now. And from the stories and facts she told him, Mr. Outcast has gained some semblance of understanding of this mystical world. Unlike the previous world he lived in, this realm created by God houses various powerful races, creatures, and monsters. Like majestic dragons and insidious demons, humans have carved out their place on this warring continent with their fierce strength. As for the goblin race that he reincarnated into, They are widely considered the weakest and filthiest monsters in the realm. The scum of scum. That's also reflected in his abysmally low stats. Even among the goblins in this cave, he would belong to the lowest percentile in raw power. Mr. Outcast's name is Lin Tian, a level 5 goblin with God's blessing. He has no class yet, and he has a horrible stat spread. He has the racial skill of Gene Devour. Equipped with the rough stone knife, his overall combat power is at 30 points. In the past few days, he learned that there is a surefire way to get stronger as a goblin, and that is to mate with girls. You see, goblins have the ability to get stronger through constant mating and reproduction, but their race is incapable of producing female offspring. So, to reproduce, they can only mate with other female creatures, leading them to a life of constant plundering and raiding. But Lin Tian used to be a human from the modern world. Doing such horrific things is deplorable to him. The girl saw him skulking in the corner and told him not to worry, as after spending these days together, she could understand what was going on now. Lin Tian is different, and he does not want to live among these vile goblins. Just one look in his miserable eyes, and you could see that she hit the nail on the head with her assessment. She assured him that when the Night Order came to rescue her, she would tell the troops that Lin Tian had saved her. The Night Order is known to be always fair and just. Those guys will definitely let Lin Tian live peacefully in the village. Now that he's thinking about it, that idea does not seem too bad, right? The lady certainly brought up a feasible idea. Even if he can't activate his system, they just need to hold out until the humans find the lair and rescue the girl, putting her under protection. He can just survive first, and then slowly figure out how to activate the system and how it works. Before all that, it seemed like they would need to fight a few bastards, as the other goblins must have figured out where the prey stash was. Now that the goblins were coming back for more, Lin Tian hurriedly instructed the pink-haired lady to hide in their designated hiding spot. Hidden behind the rocks, she watched as Lin Tian brought out his rough stone knife. A desperate Gunnar goblin was maniacally running away from humans while fervently looking for something to mate with. He wanted to get stronger so he wouldn't be killed. Fortunately, the desperate but straightforward movement was easy to predict, and Lin Tian swiftly slashed the Gunnar goblin's throat open. At least now they know that some humans have entered the lair. Those guys might be here to rescue the lady. She immediately got up and ran towards the cavern's exit, expecting to see the rescue team, the mighty Holy Order. Lin Tian tagged along beside her. Upon reaching the spot where the action was happening, the two watched as a knight wearing heavy armor and a resplendent cloak cut down multiple goblins at once with a sword-chi slash. Lin Tian did not know whether to feel fearful or relieved to see such a powerful human. Loader is a level 25 human swordsman with a crap ton of stats. His skills include the sword-chi slash, sword dance, and the holy skill, sword return to heaven. Equipped with the judgment sword and platinum armor, his overall combat power is at 400 points. If you compare that with Lin Tian's paltry 30 points, the difference is astounding. This is his first time seeing such high attributes since he was transported to this world. Is this Loader guy really human? The lady did not hesitate to run up to the knight, smiling, waving, and calling him commander. Meanwhile, Lin Tian was looking at the dead goblins strewn all over the place. Then he lifted his gaze and saw something even more odd and alarming. The knight has raised his judgment sword, seemingly intending to slice the surviving captive. The lady Lin Tian has been protecting for days now. The little outcast goblin almost took the slash as he used all the strength in his meager body to push the lady out of the sword's trajectory. They clumsily landed to the side. The pain of hitting the floor hard is preferable to being cut down in half, right? Lin Tian was confused and alarmed. These people are supposed to be here for a rescue operation, right? Why are they turning their blades to a fellow human? Maybe it's because the cave is too dark that they mistook the lady for a goblin too. Loader looked down on the victims that disgracefully dodged his attack. The lady tried to appeal to the commander, introducing herself as Kelya. The scum knight just told Kelya to shut her mouth. Of course, he already knew that it was her, but Loader assessed that she must have been defiled by the goblins already. She might even be carrying a little evil goblin spawn at this point. He thinks it's ridiculous for a filthy thing to expect mercy from a respected knight. He brazenly told the poor girl to repent for her sins to the great Holy Mother. Kelya felt scared and helpless as she tugged on the commander's cloak while pleading. She insisted that although she was captured, she was not defiled by the goblins. She pointed at Lin Tian and asserted that because this brave little goblin was protecting her, she was kept safe and away from the rest of the lair. Loader just scoffed at her explanation. He proclaimed that if she's going to make up stories, at least make ones that are believable. Only a fool would believe that a goblin has a heart. Kelya can just go and meet her end along with these lowly and hateful creatures. Lin Tian can't believe it. Is this really the morality of humans in this world? Something pushed him to move and run. He grabbed Kelya and aimed for the exit at the other side of the cave to get the hell out of this situation. Using a simple wooden club, he intends to clash against Loder's judgment sword in hopes of buying just a little more time. He did not expect this outcome at all, but just as the knight's blade was about to cleave him in half, a mysterious glow shot into the room and lit up the whole spot. An angelic voice told Loder to wait up, and the knight complied, stopping his attacks and falling silent. Meanwhile, Lin Tian has been encased by a golden light sphere of protection. A blonde woman wearing a holy veil and controlling the golden magic while surrounded by heavily armored soldiers thinks that there is something strange about Lin Tian. Kelya called the angelic woman the Holy Maiden. She crawled towards Holy Maiden with hope in her eyes. The Holy Maiden accepted her with open arms and lifted Kelya off the ground. She handed Kelya to Commander Loder to the side and turned her attention to the goblin encased in her golden magic. She asked if he could understand her words. As far as Lin Tian knows, this woman is the Holy Maiden Ephraia, the spokesperson of the temple Kelya has told him about. If he wants to leave this place, she might be the only hope. Lin Tian stood up and confirmed the identity of the Holy Maiden. He asserted that he was not a monster of this world, and he used to be human. He just became a goblin because of a bizarre accident. He can explain everything in detail if the Holy Order would just take him along with them. Loder had to admit that the little guy did seem a lot smarter than those goblins that he slaughtered. Intelligent goblins are pretty rare. Ephraia added that goblins are usually stupid and lowly creatures that can't speak and think so fluently. With that in mind, this little one might be a gift from the Holy Mother. Holy Maiden gently looked at Kelya and confirmed whether the goblin was harmless or not. The lady vigorously campaigned for Lin Tian, saying that not only did he not hurt her, but he also protected her from the other goblins while providing food for her. Ephraia smiled and decided that since the little one was so special, they could take it back to the town. But they will conduct thorough studies before making a final decision. She stared down Lin Tian and asked if he would be okay with that arrangement. With no other choice, he trusted Holy Maiden, who is known to be a kind and empathetic figure. He agreed to tag along with the Holy Order. He was just relieved that he finally met someone who was willing to listen to reason. Staying in this lair only means death. He might as well go to a human town and prove his innocence. Ephraia raised her hand and made a bizarre gesture. That slight movement dissolved the golden defensive sphere holding Lin Tian. She turned around and ordered everyone out of the cave. Lin Tian came up to Ephraia to thank her for her kindness, promising to properly repay her soon. A twisted, smug smile appeared on the Holy Maiden's face. Lin Tian heard the sound of a blade penetrating through skin and flesh. He smelled human blood, suddenly painting the floor. Loder has stabbed Kelya in the stomach. The moment Lin Tian turned around to see what was happening, he was greeted by the sight of the lady who survived, and held on to the hope of rescue, falling to the ground in the hands of her fellow humans. Loder even stabbed her in the stomach, as he must have thought that Kelya was carrying a goblin offspring. Lin Tian was speechless, frozen in place at the utter horror of humanity's ugly side. Then he heard Ephraya's angelic voice as she demanded that Lin Tian repay her well the moment they got back to the town. He'd never heard something more demonic in his life. 1 week later, we find ourselves under the clear blue sky of a peaceful town. The plaza bell rang, demanding the attention of the townsfolk. In the town square, a stage has been set up by the Holy Order as Commander Loder gives an impassioned speech to the villagers, the children of God. He emphasized the great harm that the previous goblin raid had brought to the peaceful Bright Town. The goblins used despicable, sneaky attacks to slaughter 30 residents of Bright Town, an unforgivable challenge to the authority of the Holy Order. Hearing this made the townsfolk relive the helplessness and anger they felt for the damned goblins. They demanded blood for blood and an eye for an eye. Humans and goblins are mortal enemies. Loder continued that the Holy Order, on behalf of the temple, has purged these hateful goblins, successfully avenging the fallen villagers. The Holy Maiden stepped forward and called to the people to continue praying and devoutly offering themselves to the temple. With her angelic presence, she grazed the townsfolk with a symbol of hope and purity, as she promised that the temple would always protect her devout followers. The townsfolk ate this act up as they chanted celebratory shouts to the knights and the temple. Meanwhile, in the Holy Maiden's quarters, the atmosphere was drab and dark, seemingly ill-fitting of her status and what she represents. Looking at an esoteric text containing some iffy diagrams and magical scripts, she heaved a sigh of relief that today's sermon was a massive success. As always, the people are as foolish as ever. While holding a red vial of liquid, Ephraia, in her casual wear, was pleased that the townsfolk would pray even more devoutly to the temple and, in turn, offer more tributes to her cause. She was not just talking to herself, as someone had been locked up in her quarters for a whole week now. Hearing her captive's voice soured her otherwise successful propagandistic venture earlier. Lin Tian has been bound, gagged with a metal mask, tortured in every way possible, had his left eye gouged out, and suffered the most inhumane treatment possible. Hanged in the wall, his bloodshot eyes shot daggers to the damn witch that put him through hell on earth. If Freya looked at him with indifference, the goblin still holding on for dear life was a testament to his strong vitality. It is no wonder why the temple can't seem to eradicate these pesky goblins from the continent. Since she has some free time right now, maybe it's time to see how poison affects goblins. Hearing her spout all these vile things with her angelic voice made Lin Tian sick to his stomach. He yelled out with all the anger stewing inside. If Freya deceived him just like how she's deceiving everyone in Brighttown. She even had Kellia killed, an innocent survivor. This is what the so-called Holy Order does. This is their so-called human justice. Speaking out against the demonic Holy Maiden carries its consequences. This time, it's getting a wooden stick shoved deep into his mouth, causing Lin Tian to throw up blood. If Freya finds it strange that a weak and trashy creature like Lin Tian, a lustful goblin, dares to question her brand of human justice. In her mind, this little guy bewitched Kellia. That lady speaking up for a measly goblin is a betrayal of humanity and the Holy Order. Her death was her final loyalty. Holy Maiden is already set in her belief that goblins are nothing more than vermin on this continent, a race of good-for-nothing creatures that only bring grief. For a Holy Maiden to speak to, one should already be considered a great favor. She thinks that Lin Tian shouldn't be full of hate but be more appreciative instead. He should just use his small and disgusting body to contribute to human and Holy Order experiments. Her hand glowed with a golden gleam. A magical circle appeared behind Lin Tian, and what followed was the unbearable pain of being burned by the spell. The magical fire burned his hatred and converted it to utter hopelessness. Lin Tian asked himself if this was it. Is he going to die such a miserable death so unwillingly? Maybe it was all his fault for being too foolish. He was reincarnated from a human to a low-level goblin and thoughtlessly held onto his human compassion while thinking that the Holy Order was righteous and kind. Lin Tian's weakness and naivety were his deadliest mistakes that led him to the Holy Maiden's torture dungeon. After being taken back to the human village of Brighttown, Loder and Freya took turns torturing and toying with him in every possible way. They never believed a word he said, no matter how much he pleaded. Ultimately, Lin Tian would not last long, being toyed to death by a sadistic witch and her depraved inclinations. His second death was excruciating. It was the worst way to go. If he could do it again, he vowed to never trust humans. If he could get a do-over, he would do it right. Lin Tian, the goblin, would grind their bones and drain their blood. He will make them suffer just as they pushed him to the brink of insanity. Well, that's only if he could live again. Lin Tian opened his bloodshot eyes in confusion. He looked left and right and felt life. How is he still alive after all those painfully twisted experiments? And where the hell is he? To answer his question, the system promptly appeared to tell him that the Goblin life simulation system had been activated. His final evaluation was that he died. Due to his foolishness, he forgot that he was a goblin, and that humans would never trust a goblin, nor would they pity one. He died in torment, and the pain of this week-long torture will be imprinted upon his soul. Suffering one of the worst fates for any transmigrator, he will be given a restart for a new life. So, this is the system, one that only activates upon death. If he's reading everything correctly, this means that he can be brought back to life, but it seems he will be reborn as the lowest creature once again, a common goblin. Just to make sure, he asked the system what his yes or no choice represents. It promptly answered back that if he chooses no, his soul will dissipate, a permanent death. If he chooses yes, he will retain his current memory and system, sending him back to the Goblin Cave a week before his death. All these parameters might seem a little confusing at first, but he eventually got it. With a twisted smile, Lin Tian reckons that this is the universe's way of giving him another shot for revenge. He must pay back every sick and twisted thing that Loder and Freya did to him. Without hesitation, he chose the option to go back in time and change his decisions. The only thing fueling him was a sick desire for vengeance. From now on, his Goblin Life 2.0 will begin. No more Mr. Nice Guy. The void surrounding him dissipated into a digital mess as the process of transferring his body to the Goblin Cave commences. When the process was done, he was given a little something to help him survive a bit longer in this second iteration. The system has slightly strengthened him. Lin Tian looked at his hands and felt a little lighter and more robust. The enhancement really was slight, as the system said, but it's a lot better than nothing. The system warned him that although he had been reborn, the danger was not over yet. By this time, the human holy order is about to reach its location. If he dies again, the system will not be able to revive him once more. It's just as Lin Tian expected. Right now, he has to think of ways to deal with the holy order's inevitable arrival. He can't let his guard down even a little bit. First, he asked the system what it could do. Well, the system is called the Goblin Life Simulation System. It enables him to simulate his life to foresee future events. Every choice he makes will lead to different outcomes. Each simulation goes on for 24 hours. At the end of that, he will earn points that can be exchanged for items. Seeing the future through simulations is nothing to scoff at. Lin Tian reckons that he can certainly work with this. He opened the prompt and quickly started his first life simulation. The current scenario is a mission to escape the Goblin Cave. With Holy Knight Loader discovering the Goblin Lair, Lin Tian needs to make the following choices. The first option is to warn his fellow goblins and unite to face Loader, Ifreya, and their men. This would yield 10 points. The second option is to abandon the other goblins and escape before everyone gets wiped out. This would yield 5 points. The third and final option is to hide in the cave and just pray that Loader and the Holy Order don't find him. That's a crisp 0 points added. Lin Tian took the time to carefully consider all the options. Although he was given 3 to choose from, some options are hopeless. He knew that even if all the goblins in the cave united, they couldn't match Loader's monstrous power. Escaping is the only thing that can save him. But thanks to the system, he can simulate the first option, the one with the highest score. If he can exchange those points for a weapon, he might be able to defeat them with a sneak attack. Just as he thought, the simulation ended with his death. He would be able to successfully lead the goblins in a desperate battle against Holy Knight Loader, but the large gap in strength would get every goblin wiped out. The system advised him to recognize his strengths before making a crucial decision. So, it's confirmed that relying on the goblins is not a feasible way to survive, but he still acquired 10 points from the simulation. Excited, he immediately opened the points exchange shop. He was greeted by the projection of multiple weapons to buy. Unfortunately, most of them were priced in the hundreds or even multiple thousands. Lin Tian's measly 10 points in the bank are not nearly enough. At least he found a dagger that costs exactly 10 points. It was an elven lightweight swift blade, a small dagger crafted by elves, fragile but incredibly sharp. He immediately bought it and equipped the new blade. It raised his strength by 15 points and his speed by 10%. It really was exceptionally sharp, basically worlds apart from rough goblin weapons. If he could hit a vital spot, a one-hit kill could be possible. With that out of the way, Lin Tian has one more question for the system. He was sent back a week ago, but he can't see any trace of Kellia in the cave. Where did she go? The system explained that due to Lin Tian's rebirth, some timeline details have changed. In this timeline, Kellia was not captured in the Goblin raid, and she continues to live a happy life in Bright Town. Lin Tian was surprised to hear that the young lady was safe and sound. She did not have to endure the trauma of being captured by goblins and dying at the hands of her rescuers. A small smile crept up in Lin Tian's mouth. In some convoluted way, it looks like he fulfilled his promise to Kellia. In that case, he has no more concerns. There's no need to hold back against the Holy Order. But first, he must escape and survive. He found the narrowest passage out of the cave. The entrance outside is smaller, so the guards posted up should be relatively weaker. Lin Tian lurked around the cavern's opening and spotted 2 guards. They were talking about their disgust for goblins and how easy this job would be. He took his time while staying hidden, planning how he would tackle this problem. The guards were relieved to be assigned to the small entrance. Any goblins that run out would just be trash that can be crushed with one hammer swing. But they mustn't forget that Lord Loader ordered them to kill any girl who tries to escape in the chaos must be killed. They can't let any survivor reach the village. Hearing this made Lin Tian furious. This holy order and their holy rule would even kill innocent people of their own kind for no valid reason, let alone a goblin. He has no other choice but to fight his way out of these guards. So, he devised a plan and pinched his nose together to make his voice pitch higher. Then, he acted as if she was a girl from Bright Town, frantically pleading to be saved from the grasp of goblins. The guards were pleased that they were finally getting some action. All they have to do is kill this straggler, and Lord Loader will reward them. They slowly approached the cavern opening with a hidden blade. With a fake bright smile, the guard called to the fake survivor to come out and not to be afraid now that the knights were here. He did not even get to finish his deceitful spill before his blood was splattered all over the cave walls. Lin Tian came out with the eyes of a cold-blooded killer. His new blade was baptized by the blood of his first kill. Let the human slaughter begin. The second guard stared at his frozen comrade in bewilderment, who was shaking for some reason. With words of confusion as to why he was taking so long to kill some weak goblin, he headed towards him. He couldn't even imagine that something could go wrong in such an obvious situation. In his opinion, they were the hunters, and the goblin was the victim. However, Lin Tian didn't think so. From the moment the humans decided to betray his trust, they had switched roles. He only had one goal now, to become stronger and take revenge. Throwing himself at the guard who didn't realize what was happening, he sent him flying. Due to the effect of surprise, he couldn't react in time and lost his balance. Now he was nothing more than an easy target for our hero. Already in the next moment, his sword reached the enemy and left a large wound on the body of the warrior. The guy could not believe that some goblin could defeat him so easily. However, his thoughts were interrupted by a sharp pain that prevented him from thinking clearly. He couldn't stand on his feet and fell to the ground with a painful cry. Raising his frightened eyes, the guard looked at the goblin he and his friend had wanted to kill a few minutes ago. But now the situation was completely different. He had a feeling that the goblin in front of him was a demon, and he was partially right. Hoping that the goblin would somehow miraculously understand him, the man began to beg him not to kill him. Right now, it was the only thing he could do. He showed Lin Tian a medallion depicting a woman and a child, and said that he had a wife and daughter waiting for his return. It was quite ironic for our hero to watch the man who had not hesitated to try to kill him a few minutes ago, now asking for mercy under such a cover. The knight continued to justify himself, saying that he only did it because he was following the orders of a holy order. He promised that if our hero let him go, he would bring him a bag of gold coins and a human girl. The guard tried his best to convince Lin Tian, not even realizing how much he didn't care about anything he said right now. In his short life in this cursed world, our hero had managed to become completely disillusioned with humans. The order guard thought he could fool him with his promises and smile, but Lin Tian could clearly see the knife behind his back. Unfortunately for the guard, he never realized it. Seeing our hero as nothing more than a mindless goblin, he pulled out the knife and lunged at him with a snide laugh. The very next instant, blood splashed out, however, it did not belong to Lin Tian. Among the two of them, the only one who was brainless, and now headless as well, was the guard. The broken medallion and the dagger he never had time to use were left lying on the ground. It was finally over. After this fight, Lin Tian was even more convinced that he shouldn't trust anyone, especially humans. Suddenly, some noise and a bright light came from deep within the forest, which could only mean that Saint Maiden and Loder were already close by. Right now, he was far from being in a condition to oppose them. He needed some time to become stronger. After taking a shirt from one of the guards, our hero Lin Tian set off. He promised that he would meet Loder and Freya again, and then they would pay for all the pain he had experienced because of them. Freya and Loder came to the place where the two dead guards were lying. After seeing that they were dead, Loder wondered what had happened here. Normally, 2 guards could easily stop even 24 goblins, but this case was out of line. If there was a creature capable of defeating 2 armed warriors, it was most likely a mutant goblin. They were the ones who most often caused problems for the Holy Order. Letting such a creature escape would mean more trouble in the future. Loder and Freya knew this. Loder kicked the corpse of the guard, who in his opinion was just a useless piece of trash, unable to handle even a mutated goblin. Freya, on the other hand, was incredibly excited and agitated at the mention of the mutated goblin. Her unhealthy tendencies were making themselves known, and the memories of the days when she had fun with the mutated intelligent goblin added to her excitement. She was eager to get her hands on such an interesting toy again and have fun with it. As evening fell, Lin Tian was able to get far enough away to surely be out of Freya and Loder's reach. After a long and tiring journey, he decided to take a little break and regain his strength. His primary goal was revenge. He was going to do to the Order what they had done to him. Goblins could improve their characteristics by mating and devouring. By improving their own characteristics and producing offspring, they could raise a stronger next generation and expand their power. By putting this plan into action and becoming stronger, Lin Tian planned to make every human in this world live in fear of death, and every woman moan and howl at his feet. Suddenly, his thoughts were interrupted by some rustling that came from the bushes behind him. Lin Tian was immediately alarmed, as he didn't rule out the possibility that the Holy Order had continued to search for him. Therefore, as soon as he saw the clothed silhouette, he immediately rushed to attack without a second thought. Attacking the enemy first and taking them by surprise was always a good idea. His tactic worked. The stranger was indeed shocked by his sudden appearance. He was so frightened that he stumbled and began to fall to the ground. However, Lin Tian was still wrong about something. The stranger in front of him was a goblin, and judging from his behavior, he didn't mean him any harm. Our hero was quite surprised by this turn of events. but he immediately put his thoughts in order and became wary. Because of the betrayal he had experienced, he no longer intended to trust anyone so easily. In the next moment, however, the picture he saw before him made all his wariness disappear, replaced by astonishment. In front of him, a beautiful goblin girl was lying on the ground, looking at him with frightened eyes. Lin Tian was surprised, as he had heard that goblins could only be male. But the innocent creature in front of him was clearly a girl. After recovering a bit, the goblin girl began to frightenedly ask Lin Tian not to hurt her, as she had just come here to fetch water. The fact that the goblin girl could speak in full and clear sentences surprised our hero even more. However, when he checked her status window, everything made sense. According to the information provided by the system, the girl was a level 3 goblin. Her profession stated that she was a god messenger, which explained her unusualness. From the skills she had devouring and exuberant growth. But what caught Lin Tian's attention the most was the information that if a male goblin teamed up with a female goblin, then the male goblin would become a legendary Goblin God. This information made our hero think becoming a Goblin God meant becoming very strong, and this was just what was needed. He didn't want to miss such a good chance. Seeing Lin Tian's gaze, the frightened goblin girl saw it as a danger and started begging him again to let her go. She told him that if she didn't bring water to the village, the tribe leader would beat her to death. Realizing his mistake, Lin Tian apologized and tried to calm the girl down. He gently stroked her shoulder and said that he wouldn't hurt her. He couldn't let her cry as it might attract unnecessary attention. The best solution was to settle the misunderstanding that had arisen. Fortunately, the girl had indeed calmed down and no longer looked so frightened. Crawling over to Lin Tian, she excitedly asked if he could talk too, to which he nodded affirmatively. By nature, goblins couldn't talk properly, so it was very difficult for the girl to communicate with her tribesmen. The girl was very surprised by Lin Tian's kindness and care, as in the tribe, the other goblins only beat and scolded her. She liked being around him so much that she offered him to return with her to the tribe. After hearing about the tribe, Lin Tian started asking her about it. Since he still wasn't sure if he could escape the chase from the Holy Order, the best solution was to lay low and wait in some goblin village where he would be like the others. Such a sudden change in our hero's demeanor confused the girl a bit. But after looking at Lin Tian with her charming eyes, she still agreed to take him to the village. A sly smile appeared on our hero's face. He had long thought about where he could find his subordinates. Fortunately, the opportunity presented itself. As soon as they arrived in the village, armed goblins came out of the tents. They immediately surrounded the uninvited guest. Like all goblins, they were surprised that Lin Tian was wearing clothes just like humans. To them, something like this was new to them, and they had never seen such a strange goblin before. At the same time, our hero was assessing their numbers and was pleased that he had come across such a large village. Now he could begin to gain their trust. And he began by asking permission to join their village and meet the boss. The goblins did not like such requests at all, some strange guy coming to their house and demanding something more. Instead, they were going to catch this insolent guy, beat him up, and then bring him to the boss. Suddenly, they were interrupted by a goblin girl who asked them to wait and not to attack the important guest until he meets the boss. This move should have delayed the fight for a while, but all plans were spoiled by the boss himself, who heard the noise and came out to see what was going on. All the other goblins immediately quieted down at the approach of the boss, and our hero tensed up. The boss was clearly not in the mood to be woken up. Lin Tian was tense for a reason. The boss had reached level 25 and was equipped with some pretty good weapons combined with an impressive set of skills. Our hero was surprised that this village had such a strong boss. And the unfortunate thing is that he will need to defeat the boss to take his place and get his gang of goblins to speed up his own progression. Entering the foreign goblin lair, the chief asked the goblin girl what the deal was with the outsider, and she explained that he had brought Lin Tian in because he had nowhere to go. That explanation seemed satisfactory to the chief, but not for good reasons. He immediately handed the order to kill the outsider freak and eat his meat. The tribe celebrated in a frenzy. Pulling out his knife, Lin Tian had to think fast for a way out. The only feasible idea that struck him was to offer his services to create new weapons for the tribe that would make them stronger. Hearing such an interesting proposition blunted the chief's bloodlust, ordering his goblins to wait up. This goblin priest started making his way closer to Lin Tian, seemingly scanning him from head to toe. Since the young orc does not have the distinct smell of a liar, the chief asked what kind of weapons he could offer. Hours upon hours of watching blacksmithing shows in the previous world have led him here. As long as there are iron ores, he'd be able to make simple tools and better weapons given some time. Given that the chief can speak in the human language, it's safe to assume that higher-level monsters possess higher levels of intelligence. Lin Tian put forth an idea that gaining iron tools would equip the tribe with the tools to stop fearing humans. The proposal was too tempting, so the chief gave in and gave Lin Tian 3 days to find ores and produce results in exchange for his life. The chief even bundled up the goblin girl's life alongside Lin Tian if he failed to do this job. As soon as the leader retreated to his quarters, the rest of the tribe followed suit. One thing's for sure is that the old chief is a ruthless bastard who'd kill his own kind in cold blood. Confronting him head-on is out of the question. He'll have to make iron tools to buy time while covertly getting stronger. That night, a scout party was released to the barren woods, guided by the moonlight.